Now it's time to create our speed power up. Now before we continue, this is an excellent time to commit our triple shot. So let's go ahead and click on collab and implemented triple shot power up. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and create our speed boost. Now you should be pretty confident in creating your own power-ups. So we're going to go ahead and do a similar process where we're going to set up our speed boost in the scene. We'll go ahead and get it ready to be a collectible. And then we're going to look at a challenge for how to approach this from a modular design. So for instance, right now we have a generic power-up script. How can we use that one power-up script to issue every power-up for our game? So our game is going to have 3 power-ups. We're going to have a triple shot, a speed boost, and a shields power-up. I want to use our power-up script to initialize each of those power-ups based on which one you collect. So we're going to have to create logic to determine which one did you pick up. And we'll basically assign a unique ID to each one. And based on that unique ID that's assigned, that's the one that we're going to activate. So we'll go ahead and walk through that logic after we set it up. So let's go ahead and open up your speed folder under your power-ups inside your sprites. And let's go ahead and drag the first one, the first frame, into our hierarchy. So here we go. We'll do the exact same thing. We're going to set the scale to about 0.3. Okay. And this is our speed power-up. Speed power-up. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and save our scene. And now the first thing we want to do, once again, is you're going to set the sorting layer to foreground so that it can interact with our player. And you're also going to want to add a circle collider. So circle collider 2D, and go ahead and adjust the scale of that circle collider so that it's more centered, and adjust it on the X position. Okay, we are set to go. And actually, I'm sorry, there is one more thing. Make sure isTrigger is set to true so that we can pass through the object. Last but not least, let's go ahead and drag our power-up script onto the speed power-up. Now, if we run this, everything's going to work just fine. So you'll see here that both power-ups now move down directly on the screen. However, both of them award the triple shot because that's what we're telling it to do. So in the power-up here, you can see that right here, when it collides, it checks if we're working on the player. And if we collide with the player, we get the player component. If the player component exists, then we say player.tripleshot power-up on. So we enable the power-up. So what if we have multiple power-ups? How can we distinguish this triple shot from a speed boost and so forth? We can distinguish it by adding a unique ID. So for example, let's go ahead and create a private variable called ID, or let's go ahead and say, yeah, we'll go ahead and say power-up ID. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and make that a serialized field so we can access it in the inspector. And let's go ahead and define what our power-ups are. So for example, let's go ahead and say that 0 is going to equal triple shot, 1 will equal speed boost, and then 2 is going to equal our shields. Now you may be wondering, why did they start this off at 0? Typically in programming, numbers start at 0. Always assume that numbers start at 0. Okay, so power-up ID. Now looking at both of these objects in the inspector, they each have a power-up ID now associated, and they're both 0. So following our chart, our triple shot is going to be 0, and our speed is going to be 1. Just set it to 1 like that, and we're done. Now we can distinguish them based on that ID, but we're not making use of that ID yet. So what do we need to do to make use of that? We need to go ahead and check what that ID is, and based on what that ID is what we're going to award. So for instance, if the player is not null, we're going to enable triple shot here. Let's go ahead and enable speed boost here, and then we'll also have one eventually for enable shields. Okay, so for enable triple shot, we only want to do this. We only want to do this line of code We only want to do that line of code if the power-up ID is 0. So if power-up ID equals 0, then we want to do this. So let's just convert it to an if statement. Simple as that. So here, if power-up ID, all right, so power-up ID is equal to 0, then we're going to go ahead and enable triple shot. So player.tripleshot power on. And then we can have an else if to check for another one. So else if power-up, else if power-up ID is equal to 1, then what do we want to do? We're going to enable our Spood Beast. And last but not least, we can go ahead and do another else if, and we can check first power-up ID is equal to 2. And that's going to enable our shields. So this is a perfectly fine way to distinguish these power-ups and assign them unique IDs and make use of them. Now, based on the associated ID for this power-up, we will now only assign and enable the appropriate power-up. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and look at the challenge of actually applying this speed boost. I'll see you then.